So once again, welcome back. Welcome to the talks for the day. So this is a very happy moment for me because I get an opportunity to introduce two of my favorite people here, right? One person, he's a veteran. He is from Navy. He was there with Navy for 15 years. But don't think he is going to be very serious. He may look like that, but he is the energy booster for the entire Leela Gurukulam, right? So I'm so happy to introduce Manoj Mani. So Manoj is having around 20 years corporate experience as well in learning and development. More than that, he is a parent mentor with Leela Gurukulam. He does programs for parents here. And Manoj's son, Rishit, is also part of Leela Gurukulam. And to talk about Manoj, I don't have to say many words. Once you look at his presentation, you will understand what he is, what energy bomb he is. Okay, and then along with Manoj, I don't know how this combination came. I think this is the best combination that we could ever have. We have Mehul Goyal. Okay, so Mehul is otherwise called as Master G. Okay, every children here in Leela Gurukulam, they enjoy the way Mehul takes the session. He's so loving and he's so amazing with his sessions that children always wait for his session to come. That is what Mehul is all about. Mehul is a mentor with Leela Gurukulam and he has also done his research and study in quantum science. So I'm so very happy to invite both of them, Manoj and Mehul, to the dais. Please.
Thank you, Subhashrima. That was solid performance pressure because expectation is already set. Right now, if I don't live up to the expectation, it becomes a challenge. But anyway, let's not waste time. So Mehul will join me as soon as we'll do this Jugalbandi part. Okay, so he'll come and go, and that's how it's going to be. Okay, great. So we'll start with just to set the context of the gamers of Dwapara Yuga, the power of dice. So the conversations today, of course, in the context of board game, is going to be about dice as well, right? So just to let the world know and for us to get some perspective, so we would want to introduce three characters. One, of course, Shakuni, being the king of Gandhara, but then he's also an expert in dice. People say that, when he throws the dice, it's like magic, right? And of course, he's also known for a lot of other attributes as well, which is what I've put out over there. But so that's Shakuni for us. We also have Yuddhishtira, the king of Indraprastha, and more aligned towards Dharma. And, so because of that, he had his own challenges that is there. But after the 12 years of exile, he also gained mastery of certain things. And then he also joined King of Virata as in the name of Kanka, right? So that's that. And then, of course, King Virata, where he's been by default wanting to engage in the game of dice and other things. So now question, what is common amongst all the three? All the three characters. Hey, by the way, that's not planned one, okay? When he said the right answer. Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. Obviously, all the three are kings, right? And of course, they had something to do with dice game. And because of their involvement with dice game, there were also certain attributes that people associated with them. Right? Shakuni was more of cunning kind of a thing, right? Yeah. Yuddhishtira was more kind of, like, okay, righteousness, but then he did not know how to play the game of dice, and then he put everybody at stake, right? All that, right? And then King Virata is more of, let's play the game always. Come on, let's play it. That's how it was, right? Great. Good. Now, if you look at it, one of the 64 kalas which a king would want to have is this. In fact, I would want to say two, okay? If you look at it out over here, it says all of them involved in Dhyuta Kreeda, which is the game of dice or largely game of gambling. But at the same time, there's also something called as mastering the game of dice, which is called Akarsha Kreeda. Does that help when we're talking about dice? Akarsha Kreeda means what? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I get it. I think people are now really in the flow of what we wanted to communicate. Yes, so it was also known as that, right? Great. Now we'll look at, what actually involved was, we would know that they were manipulators, which Shakuni was. That's what we thought was. And Yuddhishtira is somebody who I would want to repeat it once again. So it's more of, always religious, righteousness in nature. And because of his righteousness, he also had a challenge of dealing with the external circumstances. Right? Good or bad, we will look at it a little later. Right? Great. And of course, Virata was there. Right? Now, why was this game of dice essential for kings at that point in time? Let's explore that as we move forward. Okay? We saw about 64 colors. As we move on, we would want to give you a little bit of scientific perspective of the game of dice, and also look and see how things manifest, right? So for a scientific perspective, I have none other than my partner in crime, Mehul, who is an expert in quantum science. Mehul, over to you. And we'll look at the scientific perspective, right? And once Mehul finishes the scientific perspective, I'll come back to look and see how practical application can happen. Does that work? Yep.
Shivoham. Actually, I'd like to go back to Shivoham. I'm Mehul Goyal, and I'm actually very excited and thrilled to be here. Little more excited than I'm nervous. And I love doing this. I love talking about and sharing some things which excite me. There's almost everything which excites me in this. Like almost everything I see, it really fascinates me, and that's why I'm here to share about something which fascinates me extremely, extremely a lot, which is the field of quantum science. And why it fascinates me even more is because it's so close to what I have learnt in the Gurukulam and what I am as a person also. So first of all, before I start and continue from where Manoj has left off, I'd like to introduce myself a bit. I am Mehul, and I am a Gurukulam student. So I have been graduated from the Gurukulam, and I have learnt for around 7 to 8 years, and the Gurukulam education is pretty much what I am right now, and that's what even we wanted to continue. The reason why we have started Leela Gurukulam as a group. And as a part of my Gurukulam education, I had done this diploma in quantum science with a very renowned physicist. His name was Dr. Amit Goswami. So with him, I learned a lot about quantum science, and every time as I was learning with him, I was exploring that this is so much, so much in line. It is exploring and it is taking us so much close to what has been taught to us, what I had learned from Maya and Babaji in the Gurukulam. So that's why I'm very thrilled to share and very fascinated about this subject. So all I'm going to do is, I'm not going to be looking at quantum science as theories as much, but as a way, a perspective, a thought process of how we can look at the universe around us. So, because otherwise if we go into the theories of quantum science, agar ek cheez pakda, then it can lead to more and more complexities and we'll go somewhere else. So we will just look at it as a perspective. The question I am more interested in over here is the second question which we are talking about, which was why was the game of dice considered as one of the kalas? So when we listen to the word kala, we automatically know it's an expression of who we are. So what does the dice got to do with it, right? Because the common perception is when you're having a dice, the first question is, do we even have anything to do with the outcome? Right? So what a common notion people will have, right, which was written over here, the classical worldview, which is based on whatever we have studied in school about science, right? That the physical world is the ultimate reality. We are passive observers, right? So if you look at it that way, it doesn't really make sense when somebody comes and says rolling a dice or the game of dice can be a kala. How can, if the world is out there and you have nothing to do with it, so then usme kala kya hai? What's the kala in that, right? And second thing, which we commonly interpret, is that we can influence the physical reality only by force. Which means when we are saying when we are rolling the dice, if you want to get a certain number, the only way would be, it's like, it almost seems impossible, right? We feel like, acha theek hai, ek angle pe karna padega, itna force dalna padega, kahan pe jaake girega and the number comes. So, I don't think that's the kala they were talking about, right? They were not talking about a kala wherein, you move your hand in such a way ki wo number aaye. That's not what they were talking about. So what does it mean when all of our rishis and when all of the scriptures considered the game of dice as a kala? Why was it a kala? right? Because if we have nothing to do with the dice and we have no influence, right? The question is, does the player have any influence on the outcome of dice? If we have no influence, then, you know, what is the role? Do I have any role in what is the outcome of the dice? Anybody, what do you feel? Like, do you feel that you have a role or any influence on the outcome of what comes on the dice? Just, what do you feel? Okay, raise of hands of people who think there is, you being as a person have an influence on what comes on the dice. Just a raise of hands. Who feels it is? Right, so that's the aspect we are here to explore, right? Because what quantum science, the quantum worldview says is something very different, and that's what we are here to explore. So the quantum worldview says that the physical reality is the manifestation of the observer. So what this means, this is exactly what we're going to be going through the entire 10-15 minutes I'm going to speak over here. We will explore this part itself, because now we have understood what the quantum worldview says. It says that the physical reality is the manifestation of the observer. Now we will be using the help of an experiment, one very famous experiment which happened in quantum science, which led to the founding of quantum science. Like, quantum science started with this experiment, and this experiment primarily happened because of a debate between two scientists. So one scientist was somebody we'll all know, Sir Isaac Newton, who is the founder of Newtonian sciences, and there was this other scientist whose name was Christian Huygens. And the debate was about whether lights and electrons, or these particles, are they matter or are they wave? That was the discussion, right? And the explorations, or what they found with that experiment, is what led to a completely different world, which is what created the quantum worldview, or the quantum way of looking at reality. And the other sentence over here says that there are multiple possible realities. We all manifest our own reality, right? So let us dive into the quantum world, because when we dive into the quantum world, everything will seem very different. Nothing will make sense. And one thing you will see is that when you go to the subatomic world, everything seems magical, and it seems that anything can happen, right? Because if you go to the subatomic world, you'll see that particles can just disappear and reappear, right? You can have particles at multiple places, multiple positions at once. Each particle can have different forms at once, right? So from the common notion which we have got from science previously, this doesn't make sense, right? But that's what we got when we jumped into the double slit experiment. And we will look at what happened through this small video which I have to show. This video is about the double slit experiment which I talked about. This was an experiment which was conducted to solve this debate which I spoke about. The debate between Christian Huygens and Sir Isaac Newton on whether light is a particle or a wave. So I'll just play this video for us.
Our senses are playing tricks on us. You just gotta wonder, what is this reality that we find ourselves in? Quantum physics says it's all just waves of information. Do I believe that? I hope so. Yikes! And here we are, the granddaddy of all quantum weirdness, the infamous double slit experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The
listen, you can just watch the video and it's okay if you can't listen to the video, just watch the video. Wherever an explanation is required, I'll speak. So you can just watch the video, you'll get an idea what's happening.
Most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now, there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright.
So one thing we saw is when they shot particles or marbles at the double slit, behind they got a double slit pattern, right? Because what happened is, pretty obviously, all the marbles which went through the slit went and created a double slit on the screen, and whichever didn't bounced off, right? It didn't go. But as you can see, when you put waves through a double slit, this is the pattern we get. So now we know what is the properties and what is the nature of a particle. The nature of a particle is such that it will create two slits on the screen when shot through a double slit, and the nature of wave is such that it will create this interference pattern when it's shot through the double slit. Now the question is, was light a particle or a wave? So the obvious next step is that we'll be going to the quantum world and we'll see what happens when we shoot light through the double slit.
Lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So, when we throw things, that is, matter, through two slits, we get this. Two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. But we get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles.
So one thing we can see is when they shot the light at the double slit experiment, at the double slit, they've got this interference pattern, which should conclude that light or our reality is made of waves, right? But it doesn't end here. There is something which is more exciting which happens, because they were all like baffled. How is it possible if everything around us is made of waves? Then why do we perceive it as matter? Like, why do we, it feels that everything is made of particles, right? So scientists were like completely baffled, and they chose to do something else. They chose to shoot one photon at a time, right? Instead of shooting light all together through a beam, shot one photon at a time.
How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they can interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. Physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek.
So that's the concept he's talked about, right? So the waves, that light photon, it actually didn't go through one of the slit, not two of the slits, or did it go through both, or did it go through neither, right? Because how is it possible that you pass it through, two slits and it's going somewhere else? And at one point they realized that electron which they shot, right, it was not going through one or both or either of the slits. It was just everywhere, right? So that's the concept of quantum superposition, which they're talking about. That actually speaking, that electron didn't go through one, nor did it go through both, nor did it go through any of them. So what does it mean? So it was everywhere. It was not. So that was the confusing part. So of course, they were like, okay, we need to watch this. We need to measure and see what's happening. So how is it possible that it doesn't go through both the slits, or how is it possible that it didn't go through any of the slits? So where did it go? So the next thing they did is they put an observer, right? They put something to measure and see, okay, what's happening? Which slit is it going through? What is happening? And then they just jumped into more and more confusion.
See which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. It was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange, never world of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing.
Yes. So that experiment leaves us with a lot of things, lot of thoughts, and so did, the entire. We can see why it needed an entire new field of understanding to study exactly what was happening, because as you're watching this video, we can imagine what the thoughts go to somebody else, right? Like as of now, when we are watching, the first thing comes, okay, so there is so many things happening in this experiment. So we are living in a matter universe or a wave universe. Are we living in two universes? Like how is it working out, right? So the next question which it led to was this discussion about, are we living in two different realities? Is our reality actually waves, or is our reality particles, right? So that was the big question which came about, and the rest of my presentation is going to be all about this itself. It's just going to be expanding on this experiment, because this experiment is very powerful and it has got a lot of things for us. So let's expand and see what's happening in this experiment, because few things we could make out. One, that we saw that the natural property of everything around us, all electrons, all light, everything, the natural way it is, it's a wave. So that was proven through the double slit experiment, wherein they shot light and they got the interference pattern. But the second thing to notice over here was that when there was an observer, right? So nobody knows what the observer has to do with it, right? But we know that when there was an observer, suddenly the electrons, everything, our reality, it starts behaving like a particle, right? So there are lots of questions here. One, okay, if everything is a wave, why do we observe it as a particle? And what makes the wave become a particle? That's the last question the video also left us with, right? The last question the video asked all of us was, what creates that collapse? What creates that collapse of the wave? And what makes the particle universe? And what decides, how will the particle get manifested, where it will come, right? Because there are a million, like the concept of quantum superposition itself is that there are a million positions where that particle can be, right? And that's the entire field of that particle, right? And out of that, when we are observing, it chooses only one, right? So what they came up with afterwards was that waves are the possible reality, particles are the physical reality, but even the particles, as you can see over what they have shown in these two images, even the particles are actually a wave function which is perceived by us, right? It's perceived by us as a particle, but even that particle exists as a wave, right? So here's where we'll see the beautiful concept of the quantum cloud model of an electron of an atom which came about, which showed that this we all know, right? This was the previous model of the electron which was made by Dr. Niels Bohr and Dr. Rutherford, which is what we have studied also most of us. So that was the original model of the atom. But when we dived into this world of quantum weirdness, we had to relook at how we were seeing even atom, because if you are saying that everything is created by atom, what makes that atom what it is, right? And that's when the electron cloud model comes. And what this model tells us, or what it is trying to portray to us, that electron which is there in that atom is there at all that entire cloud, the electron is there at all positions at once. So it's not there at one position, so that's why it's called as the probability cloud. So the waves which we are talking about are actually probability waves. Probability waves as in possible positions of where that electron can be. So does that mean that wave says that these are possible positions where the electron can be, but the electron is actually not anywhere? No, the wave says that it's not possible positions where the electron can be, but the truth is actually the electron is there in all those possible positions until it is observed. Which means until an observer observes that electron cloud model over there, until nobody sees it, that electron is actually there everywhere. That electron is actually there everywhere until we observe it, and once we observe it, we will see it in one of those infinite positions which are there, right? So obviously now the next question which comes about, which all of us have, which even I have, is, okay, what is the observer effect? What does the observer do, right? What causes that collapse? What makes all of those million possibilities, all of those waves to become one reality? And on what basis is that reality chosen, right? That's the next question, right? So the answer to all of this is a concept which is very, very fascinating to me, which is this is the most exciting part for me of the presentation. This is a concept which really excites me, a very powerful concept. They realize that it's the concept of light, because light was something which is there in all parts of science. It was there in everything which was studied about in general relativity also, and whatever quantum science discovered. So they found out that it was the magic of light. It was the magic of light which was causing that collapse. So there is a lot we can go through in science to understand what this means, but I'd like to take a very simple example for us to appreciate what exactly happens over here. So if you all imagine a dark room, right? Until there is no light in that room typically doesn't exist for us, right? Because if we are in a dark room and there is no light, we can't see the walls, so how do we know the walls are there, right? So until there is even one single diya which is bought, right? That's why I put a diya over there, or even little bit of light bought, until that room doesn't exist. We are not aware of that room. We cannot be aware of anything in our reality until there is no light. And as soon as you bring a single diya into that room, what happens? Now that entire room becomes a reality. So this one example for us conceptually shows us what's that power of light in our life, right? Because it's only our light of awareness which creates our physical reality, right? Our physical reality is basically everything we are aware of. If there is something you're not aware of, obviously it's not your reality, right? So there can be nothing which one more example of this could be, a very commonly heard example of, okay, if there's a teacher teaching in class, every student will learn something different based on what they're aware. But this not only works in just that part of it mentally where you only learn what you're aware of, but even in the physical world, we only perceive what we are aware of. And one more very good example of this is, we all know that we all perceive different colors, right? So for example, an animal like a parrot. So parrot or many birds, they're said to have much more wider visible range than human beings, and they can perceive many more colors. And then there are some other animals like, let's say, a cow or some other animals which are dichromatic, so they can only perceive lesser color, right? So what that means is that when we are looking at, let's say, a tree, right? When we are looking at a tree, how I'd look at that tree and how I'd perceive the color of the tree, how the cow will perceive the color of the tree, and how the parrot will perceive the color of the tree will be different. I might see it as green color. At the same time, the parrot might see it as some other color which we don't even know exists, and the cow might see it as red color. So then the question is, what is the color of the tree actually? Can you say what is the color of the tree actually? Is the tree actually green? Is the tree actually red? So we can never say that, that tree is green for us. That is our physical reality. But can we ever say that that is the only reality, right? So that's the world which quantum science took us to show that even though at the end of the day we will only see that one position, we will only see that, we will observe only one position finally, we will observe only one physical reality. But those other infinite places where the electron could be there, they still exist, and that could be somebody's reality, and that is happening at every moment as we go. There must be some 1,000 people who are looking at this tree right now, and everybody is seeing it different. So it's not about right or wrong. Everybody's reality is what they create based on what they are aware of. So that's the beautiful world which quantum science introduced to us, and that's the power of the double slit experiment. And this is pretty much the concept I wanted to share with all of you, and let us see how this contributes to our story, which we were talking about the dice, right? But now I think we are all in a much better position to appreciate dice being a kala, right? Which means that even when you're rolling the dice, that is possibility. Anything can happen. It's not only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 by 6% of 1 by 6% percentage of chance of getting a 2. There are million other possibilities. Need not be that when you roll a dice, 1 to 6 mein hi kuch aayega. That's what we think it is, but it could also be that when you're rolling the dice gets lost. Or it also could be that, when you're rolling the dice, suddenly, the dice falls off, or, suddenly when you're rolling the dice, the roof falls off, and then, okay, anything can happen. So there are no 6 possible, situations itself. There are millions of other things which can happen. And what happens finally is your choice. What you will manifest, that number which you will get, is actually your choice. And knowingly or unknowingly, what you're aware of will choose what comes at the end of it. So I'd like to call Manojji to take us ahead with the story.
Thank you so much. So you know what? I think that was, thanks Mehul. That was more of a scientific approach for people who wanted to have their, the logic part of it understand. Okay, now it will make more sense on looking at how we can apply it in reality. So Mehul spoke about choice, right? So let's look at it this way. Out of the multiple choices that could possibly exist, right? We are manifesting one aspect of it, okay? So how do you choose? That's the only thing that human beings have. We always choose. Did I say anything wrong? Because I'm having a question mark look on your faces. You say, Manoj, I don't agree to that, right? See, we always choose, okay? Now the point is, how do we choose? That's very important. Now for some of us to choose, we need to actually be in a position to decline. Okay, let me say it again. For us to choose something, we need to be in a position to decline. Decline what? Decline the existence of something. That means we need to have acceptance first. We need to have an acceptance of the millions of possibilities that exist, and inside of that possibilities exist, I have a choice to decline millions of possibilities and pick one. Make sense? Right? So for that, the only thing that you and me have as human beings is to choose. And your life, my life, our life plays out with the choices that we have made. So if your life is in a specific way, it is the choices that each one of us have made at some point in time, and it plays out. Yeah. Make sense? Yeah. You're kind of digesting that part of it, right? Right? Great. Now, what also happens is, out of these millions of probabilities that is there, now let's relate it to the game of dice. Now, when you play the game of dice, we are making a choice, right? And whatever choice you make is what shows up. So in a minute, I'll give you a nice interesting formula for manifestation, right? It's a very simple one. Makes sense? Would you be interested in that? Okay, great. Good. We'll come to this. What is manifestation? Simple. That's for you. Manifestation is intention minus anxiety. And what does the game of dice actually do for us? So you will see in the game of dice, there are millions of possibilities that is there, and you roll the dice, you play it out. Then there are dependencies on external factors that the other players play. Yes or no? Right? Now, as I'm talking right now, I wanted you to look at it from two aspects. Okay? Look at it, relate to the game of dice, and at the same time relate to what's happening in your life. Clear? Make sense? Okay, great. Now let's look and see what happens. What is the intention that you have is what gets manifested. But the problem with the intention is, the moment you create an intention, there's also an anxiety that comes along with it. Yes or no? Right? And that could be for whatever reasons. Because of your knowledge, we call that, the curse of knowledge kind of a thing. Sometimes you have too many things, and suppose somebody says, you could get a 5 when you roll the dice. What is the immediate thing that comes in your mind before you roll the dice? What if it is a 4? What if it is a 3? And even if a 5 comes, how do you attribute that 5? Luck. Right? And don't you see that's exactly what happens in our lives? Hello? You wanted something. Now relate this roll of 5 to a job that you want. Relate this roll of 5 to the partner that you want. Relate the roll of 5 to the financial condition that you want in your life. See what's happening now? See how anxiety plays out big time? Okay, for time being, let's assume that we all are super duper intentional for what we want. Okay? And after the session is over, you're like, okay, this is what it is. Manoj has said, intention creates reality. Perfect. I'm going to do this. Okay? And you walk out and life happens. The first person you meet, you tell him or her, this is what I've created for my life. And then what happens? What does he or she say to you? Huh? Are you sure? You, of all the people in the world? These are friends who will tell you all that. Right? And then what happens? Anxiety comes in. Whether we like it or not, one step of intentionality, anxiety will come in. And that's exactly what Yuddhishtira had a challenge in the first game. Shakuni was somebody who was playing in such a way that he had mastered the game of anxiety, But then when he was playing the game, he actually taunted Yuddhishtira for this is what it is, that is what, and he actually succumbed to anxiety. Hello? Right? In the last 12 years, Yuddhishtira actually managed to master how the game of dice by looking at the managing the anxiety part of it. I'll just give some time for people to think. The question then is, how do we want to, okay, by the way, do we want to manage the anxiety part of it? Whether we like it or not, the moment you take intention, it's like the back of the hand. Anxiety will come along with it. Buy one, get one, it'll come. How do you manage that? So there's something that you could look at it, okay, possibly. So if you see that there is a pattern that is emerging in your life, or there is some similarity that is coming in your life, do something surprising. And that's exactly what we do in the game of dice also. You see, every time you do something, the same number is coming, then what do you do? How do you then, when your turn comes, what do you do? How do you then throw the dice? You would be throwing like this, but sometime you wanted a 5 or a 6, what you will do? Hello? Yes or no? Right? The moment you bring that unpredictability in the whole part of it, things get back again. Clear? Right? So that is what the whole thing is all about. So now, actually, if you look at it, Shakuni was somebody who mastered the anxiety part of it, the free from anxiety. Shakuni did this. Yuddhishtira in the last 12 years did all that, and then when he became Kanka, he was actually mastering the art of how we can be free from anxiety. Clear? And when we are free from anxiety, what happens? And by the way, we are all manifesting, whether we like it or not. The point is, where are we observing? The more we observe on anxiety, what shows up? The more you observe on intentionality, what shows up? Or what manifests? Right? Now the question I would want you to look at it is, look at your life, look at our lives and see where all we have manifested. In fact, we are manifesting everything in our life right now. And the question is, where is our focus? On the anxiety part of it or in the intentionality part of it? Intention allows you to take that action. And the moment we take that action, you will see anxiety comes along with it. And the challenge for us is to master the game of dice of life so that we can now manage the so-called anxiety part of it. And as kings, don't you think manifestation is the key element? Because they need to, say that again? Rule the entire kingdom. So that if the kings are not great manifestors, what happens to the kingdom? Right? The question then is, who is the king of your life? Thank you very much. Would you be interested in manifesting such that you manage the anxiety? Right? And that's what the board games does for us. And if you look at it, all the challenges it's like a spiritual gym, if you actually look at it. You know, when you go to the gym, you kind of exercise and do that, right? This is a spiritual gym. And in the game of dice, there are millions of possibilities. You throw the dice, something happens, some number shows up, you play it out, and then somebody else throws it, and there is a new challenge that comes in. Is it similar to your life? Hello? Right? And then there will be somebody else who will come and play the game, and then there will be some other challenge that will throw up. And then when your turn comes, you will then play it again. But in life, what happens when our turn comes? What do? We indulge in anxiety, yes or no? And that is where the action becomes missing for us. In the game of dice, you will see that you have a turn with the available possibilities with the available challenge that is existing right in front of you. You are aware that there are millions of possibilities that could exist. And out of those millions of possibilities that exist, you pick up one that you choose for yourself and then make it happen. Right? So, the game of dice was used as a tool for practicing manifestation. It was a spiritual gym. Why I say spiritual gym is because that's the safest environment that you can practice, because of all sorts of permutation combinations of the life happens in that game of dice. And the more you master the board games, or the more you play the board games, we work on our subconscious. And just imagine, if you see the movies, the war movies, somebody will say, I'll go, cover me from the back. Yes or no? And then you will have somebody who's covering me from the back. Right? So in the earlier talk when Subhashrima spoke about Devi Ma and the manifestation part of it and other things, right? If you have Devi Ma covering your back, hello? Don't you think manifestation is as effortless as you walking to the supermarket and picking up that chips that you wanted and coming back? And why I would say that is, I have done that for my work. I've done that for my job that I've created, right? So it says attention, wherever you focus your attention, that's what gets manifested, right? So with that, we will say our dedication to the gamers of Bharata. A question that I would want to pose before I close the session: was Shakuni a manipulator or a manifestor? Thank you so much. Have a great time. Thank you so much.